So to continue, we're going to take a look at Beyonce's chart now. As a recap of Blake's chart, of course, we've got Sun in the 7th, conjunct Mars and Venus. So we know that her sort of solar principle, which is a person's inner child, it's your identity and your sort of your ego, which we develop from the time we have memories, like, I'm Blake, la 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 la, it's kind of your ego. It's connected to a story, of course, that's written while we're little, while we're pre-language even. It's not necessarily a true story about who it is that we are. And especially in particular, see, she's got Jupiter retrograde. It's her mission in life, in a sense, to figure out her own personal truth and then to judge accordingly and to make decisions based off of what feels right for her. And because of the Virgo in the 7th house, there's a very good chance initially, especially with Saturn up in the 10th, that she was afraid of going after roles that were sort of the caliber that she might have really wanted to go after. She may have taken roles that were stereotypical blonde California girl kind of roles. And that's Uranus in the 10th too. She's had to learn how to throw that off, how to be liberated from the fear of not being good enough, being judged by other people. It's also the part of her she's got a sort of a persona as kind of a hippie a little bit. Hippie girl. But really, all of this Virgo in the 7th says she does worry a lot about what other people think. A lot of her decisions are based off of, feedback she gets from others. So moving into Beyonce's chart, we have another. Now Beyonce is she's a Virgo sun, so it's kind of fun to compare the difference between a Virgo moon and a Virgo sun. The sun has to do more with overall your identity, but your moon is the deeper truth. Moon in Scorpio. So moon in Scorpio, moon in Virgo, very different. If you think of Beyonce and how hard she works and how driven and how successful she's been, she's had to be in control of her life. And she's got Sun in the 2nd here. So first of all, as a moon in Scorpio person, she's going to have experiences. She's going to have had experiences from the time she was a little child that were things outside of her control and beyond her comprehension as a little kid, like her father having affairs, or I'm not sure when that started, if it had always existed. But the point is, experiencing life through this perspective of emotional betrayal and trauma being a reality or a possibility, and also being really scary because as a little child, she wouldn't have understood what she was experiencing, Now, in the 2nd house, it's kind of like, but when I grow up, I'm going to be in control of my emotional security by being able to take care of myself. If you look at her 1st house, we have Saturn in Libra, conjunct Ceres in Libra. So she holds on to, in a sense, there's a holding on to relationships. She, this desire for committed relationships, but also fears in the area of relationship of feeling like, again, her partner's going to leave her. Also notice Venus in Capricorn in the 4th. So Saturn being kind of dad, and in Libra, at the same time Venus in Capricorn, Saturn in the sign that Venus rules, Venus in the sign the Capricorn rules, the Saturn rules. So these are in a relationship to each other. It's not an exact, it's a wide square. They're kind of mutually receptive, meaning there's a playback, there's like a feedback loop. It's the daughter wanting the father's approval, but also the daughter being like, how could you have done that, Dad? That's horrible. It's her feeling conflicted, the two parts of herself that love her dad and don't want to feel angry at him, and in fact will blame mom, and the other part of her that's really pissed off at dad. And so it's like there's a sublimation of those two parts of the self that she performs on stage. Sasha Fierce comes out, and Sasha Fierce does not take shit from anybody. And she may see her mother as more of a devoted, like a, wife. And maybe there are times where she's like, Mom, Dad's a dick, leave, and was angry at mom. So in this chart, it says there's an element to her psyche that said, all right, I'm going to figure out how to be in control of chaos. Uranus in the 2nd. I'm going to sort of keep chaos at bay by living a life where I have power over my destiny. That's how I would read this. Now, she's got Moon in Gemini up in the 9th. So there's her the two parts to her, right? In the 9th house, too, which tells us there's a story. She does perhaps have a role as a storyteller. And there is, there are many families, and especially in African American culture, you have a lot of families where the dad's missing, the mother is the primary caregiver. There's a story, and it goes back, of course, in America at least, it goes back to slavery. And those times when women weren't able to be with their men. The man was they were separated from each other many times. So the women, and also back to Africa, the matriarchal, the strength of the female, the feminine. And I feel like with Moon for her in the 9th, she's going and taking these powerful, emotional, personal experiences, and she's trying to put words to them. What's the truth? And she's doing it by playing these two different females, these two different roles. And that's how she's been navigating kind of the journey of healing and individuating away from her family story. There's a square to Mars, though, her Mars in Virgo in the 12th, which to me definitely ties into people who are hard workers and are really hard on themselves. They're really particular about their body. They have a lot of insecurities, even regarding their physical form. They recognize all of their flaws, all of the weaknesses, and they assume other people recognize them as well. They tend to be, though, people who have Virgo, planets in Virgo, they tend to be very giving of graciousness and generosity to others when it comes to it's like her song, Pretty Hurts. That would be an example. This pretending to be something, 12th house, that's some fantasy. That's not really who I really am. Square to her Moon. So she had to do that. She had to do the showbiz thing, where you pretend to put on all this. You put on all this stuff, and you play the part perfectly. You play the role perfectly. Super hardworking, to the point of exhaustion even. And it's taught her something. It's given her a story then to really go deeper with what she does for work and to be a storyteller. Almost has this definitely divine. 9th house has to do with truth. It's tied into, to a certain extent, 9th and 10th kind of together, royalty, those who have the right to rule the rest of us. So it's she's playing that part of Queen Bee, but it's not just for her own ego. She's representing for people a story that's a true story for many, many people, many women. So anyhow, Sun in the 2nd. So you can see with Beyonce, if we put her in a cage match with Blake, let's say they were the exact same physical size, Beyonce would win. Win. Especially if there was, you have to fight to the death because you're children or something, because they both are mothers, and I don't know. So what I mean by that is the tenacity. The Sun in Scorpio in the 2nd has a compulsivity. It's it's not going to let go until it's accomplished what it's come to accomplish. Opposite Chiron, exactly, in the 8th. So she needs to experience wealth, the wounding that comes from wealth, the wounding that comes from betrayal from those that you love. Exactly opposite her Sun, so she could do her inner child work. So the fact that Jay-Z cheated on her, that happened for a reason. What's Jay-Z's sun sign? Gemini, right? Moon and Gemini here. She needed to, in order to complete her story about husbands and wives and what a marriage should look like and how she's going to do her marriage different than her mom and dad. She's going to do it better than her mom and dad. But also she's really afraid that the exact same thing's going to happen. I think that, her experience with him, his Moon also, at the time when he was having the affair or what have you, was in Gemini. So it was an important part of their work together. So she could let go of, forgive her mother for staying with her dad, or, forgiving him being weak, and forgiving her father for cheating. Pretty cool, right? This is how relationships help us. And when we enter into relationships from a compulsive place and we're not really looking, then that's when we have unconscious relationships that are disastrous. Frankly, I think no matter what you do, you're going to be attracted to the kind of a relationship that you need at that time to learn what your psyche needs to learn. Okay. So next, let's look at Jake Gyllenhaal. So Jake Gyllenhaal, for him, we have his Sun, the persona. The Sun is in the 2nd house, just like Beyonce. So, but it's in Gemini, and we had Scorpio for her, which is much more, as I said, kind of. It's not going to let go. It's compulsive. It's her in that Lemonade video when she's bashing out all the car windows. It's a little bit that, it's oh, how dare you? No, and she's taking it back into her own hands, taking the power back. But then she's going deeper than that. She's like going to the deeper ancestral story. Like that whole series of videos I thought was really beautiful. And I love Beyonce. I think Beyonce is using her platform in such an amazing and incredible way, in a way that I think is helping so many women of like all races. I think she's incredible. So Jake Gyllenhaal, sun his moon's in Gemini. So when you have a moon in Gemini, you've got a person who is inherently curious. There's the trickster. Gemini is all about variety, different perspectives. And Gemini has this ability to, like I said, trickster, mercurial, can kind of dance around things. And there's this playful, youthful quality to Gemini. And I'm imagining with the sun being in the second, though, as well, that he himself also sometimes holds on to his emotional security by being in control of it. And he might do the thing that's the less positive side of Gemini, which is where this Jekyll and Hyde thing. So in his relationships, and I don't know much about him. I know, didn't Taylor Swift date him? And didn't she like write a song about him? Like a bad breakup song, I think. That's like all I know about him. But just seeing Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in Gemini in the second house, and Mercury at the last degree of Gemini. We have someone who definitely holds on to his story, which might be one that's quite... Moon in Pisces in the 11th, great for an actor, like also probably an awesome friend. I don't know that when it comes to long-term relationships with Uranus in the 7th as well, that he probably tends to sabotage them, or he likes his freedom. He likes to experience a lot of different versions of himself through acting and through relationships and through just life. So probably really a joker, kind of a prankster kind. If anybody knows, comment on the video because that'd be fun. I don't know anything about him, but with the square to the moon in Pisces in the 11th, emotionally he can definitely detach and pretend. So that's great for acting, not so great for your interpersonal world if you're not being real with people. And that kind of ties into the fact that he's got square Mercury, square Neptune, and opposite Saturn. So to get his emotional security needs met, and to be himself, which he holds on to, he has to maintain the truth to himself. He has to be true to himself in order to feel emotionally secure and happy. He's probably someone who needs a lot of freedom in his relationships. Probably invites in relationships too with partners that are Scorpio-ish, strong Pluto, or like obvious Scorpio in their chart, where they have wounding, where they're going to kind of hold on to him and all or nothing kind of a thing, and be a little crazy as well emotionally because they're working through things for their individuation process. And he's a projection vessel, and he knows how to play the role of a charming gentleman. So he self-portrays a little bit maybe initially, especially because Venus is square moon. So Venus, what he really desires, moon, what he really needs, are squaring each other almost exactly. So he has a struggle himself to figure out the right type of relationship in particular, I think, where he feels secure. So it's funny because I look at Beyonce's, and because it's Scorpio, it just feels much more like it has much more to do with relationships, childhood relationships, the trauma brought forward, and then her marriage, her relationships with men. Whereas with Jake, with it in Gemini, it's more in the head. It's more like, I have this story about myself and who it is that I am. I'm a smart guy, I'm funny, I'm witty, Mercury conjunct Venus in Gemini in the second. And he believes that about himself. And that part probably probably doesn't change much in order for him to feel secure. The square to the moon in Pisces, though, he probably desires oneness. Now, it's in the 11th house, though. So acting's perfect. He can go pretend to experience an emotional exchange with another person, and then he can go off set and turn off his moon in Pisces and just be back to being himself. Gemini in the second house, opposite Uranus. So I do feel like, it's actually Mars opposite Uranus. So it does feel to me like he is, and he's got Mercury opposite Neptune. The truth, and it might be an area for him where he gets told but he's not being honest, or why were you so upfront? You were so charming, and then you switched on me, that kind of thing. So he's pulling in women that activated 7th house, ruled by Pluto in the 6th, so he can do his work Pluto on his own personal power, his own sense of, I have control over my destiny or over my fate. And he may like to be able to get out of relationships really quickly if he needs to. You know, I don't have his birth chart pulled up, so I'm not sure all of his motivations. But overall, recap, second house. This is someone who, sorry, the sun's setting, so it's getting dark. Second house, someone who is Sun in Gemini, of course, emotionally looks for security through controlling his world, his environment, by using his mind, what he calls things. His words are important to him, you know, like his story. He likes to be the one who writes the story, and he's kind of likes to change it maybe sometimes. Thus acting, because you can. Now I'm curious if he wants to do screenplay writing, or he's definitely got a movie inside of him, I would say. Saturn in the 5th is the thing he needs to overcome. So it's retrograde, see? And Saturn always shows us where we have these kind of fears, these things that we've learned about ourselves, where we feel especially, there can be a weight there. We can feel inadequate in that area. We can feel like, I need to take this part of my life really seriously, and it's the house of the sun, it's his life, and it's his fame, it's his ego. So Saturn there retrograde, and it's in the sign of Libra. And it's forming a square to his Mercury and to his Neptune. That to me is the part of him that has to do with his relationship as well, maybe to his father. It's ruling his 10th house. But Jupiter is here too. So the Saturn is, you need to get to a place where you feel comfortable with failing. It's okay if you fail. And the Jupiter in the 5th to me also feels like he's got also kind of a story to tell. Like he needs meaning in his work. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's got directing or producing as well, maybe. Feels a bit more, because Jupiter's here, it's like selecting the story maybe, and then, well, there's a documentary or like a true story. That might be an area he's really interested in. Might even be politics. We'll see. Donald Trump. Okay, so Donald Trump, his sun, on the other hand, in this moon persona chart, is in the 8th. So the 8th house, opposite of Jake Gyllenhaal. And just think of these two people from a perspective of how you would imagine their inner emotional world, kind of what it looks like. When I think of Jake Gyllenhaal, I think of someone who feels things, of course, but who has an ability to kind of put words to what he's feeling and to maybe just like disassociate. He can probably also, he's probably really good at avoiding responsibility in emotional situations with people. Like he can just detach. And it's like, where'd you go, Jake? That kind of thing. He needs a smart, intelligent partner. And so if he's dating someone that's not that smart, or good luck in Hollywood, right? Okay, Donald Trump, on the other hand, is driven by these deeper childhood things. He's got Sun in the 8th, which tells us his identity when it comes to his sense of emotional security. He has big dreams and visions. Conjunct Mars, so we have an enterprising spirit, right? Ruled by Jupiter, down in the 6th. So his Jupiter in Scorpio, conjunct Venus. This is someone who has things he wants to do with his life that have to do with like amassing wealth, for sure. It just has to do with the largesse, like making his ego kind of bigger. Having the ruler in the 6th and in the sign of Scorpio makes me feel like he does it off of other people's resources or other people's labor, and off of other people's, he knows how to use people's social graces. So to take advantage of, in a very strategic way, his relationships with people. He'll use them, 6th house, like a tool, and for his own benefit, his own gain. Ruler Pluto down in the 4th. He learned it from his dad. Saturn retrograde, Pluto retrograde in Leo in the 4th. Moon in Virgo in the 4th. That's mom and dad. Saturn conjunct Pluto. To me, I mean, in the sign of Leo, of course, so that's generational, but it does feel like perhaps you've had the same dad before. Your father's, like in a past life, the father story is you need to be someone important. So you need to measure up. And I feel like with the moon being in Virgo, there's a distinct sense that not everything was okay. It wasn't good enough. Just feeling as though well, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to prove that I can like overcome your doubts in me, or etc. I think his relationship with his father, I think that's his core wound. In his birth chart, he's got 10th house, 4th house, sun in the 10th, moon in the 4th. So both parents, I think this is like, sorry, my camera keeps being weird. Both parents, I think he's got wounds in both areas. And with all of these planets over in the 6th, 7th, 8th, he goes looking outside of himself through the eyes of other people for validation that who he is important, and that who he is matters. Mercury in the 7th. He spends a lot of time thinking, ruled by Jupiter in Scorpio in the 6th, strategizing. He does. This guy is not, I think that he's smarter than a lot of us give him credit for. I think a lot of times he's also very instinctive and instinctual and has good instincts. I don't think he's always amazing. I don't think not getting into politics, but the point is, he does know how to use his human resources to get what he wants. That's his Venus. He knows how to use his skills. Definitely Venus in Scorpio is a person who will use tactics like loyalty, secrets, underhanded, sneaky stuff in this scenario. There's probably some really heavy-duty fears that he has when it comes to women, both like his wife and also women that maybe he dates. And in fact, the whole like golden showers thing that that has been reported about him, completely believe it. The Venus in the 6th in Scorpio says there's deep, taboo, hidden secrets that you have that have to do with your anima, your inner feminine. And so wanting to be treated in a way that's like demeaning, or I don't get that particular fetish myself, so I don't know like what drives people to want someone to do that to them. But this square that he has to his Pluto and to his Saturn would kind of suggest it's his inner deep belief about himself that he's not good enough. And so he maybe plays it out. Because remember, if you have a wound with one of your parents, and there's the parent needs to take responsibility for being a horrible parent in this area. But remember, that wound was developed when you were a little kid. And you love your parents. You love your mom and dad. You don't know any different. And so there's the part of the psyche that splits off, the little child, that splits off and says, either dad didn't do that or mom didn't do that, or I did it. It's my fault. Oh yeah, I am, an awful, dumb little kid or whatever. So that inner material gets brought forward in our adult life, and then we have to deal with it, and many times we'll project it. So the part of him that's the little boy that was like, I am bad, or I'm dumb, or whatever it was, who knows. That's the part that he will act out sexually by being demeaned. It's like he's validating his father because he loves his father. So when you're unconscious, you want to prove that your parent was right. Okay? And there's the other part of you when you do this, when you split, that wants to do the opposite. That maybe wants to do the exact thing that the parent did, that the child maybe judged the parent for. Maybe his dad had affairs or did stuff with prostitutes. I don't know. So it's like that part of him that has to be like his father and finish the father's story. And then there's the other part of him that has to be the opposite. And then what happens if you're, conscious, not like a psychologist or therapist, but it's just my understanding of individuation, you have to kind of go in there and really look at and do work and rewrite your story. And that's a whole other topic. But having his moon in this persona chart, also in the 4th house, in Virgo, in Virgo, a 0 Virgo, to me says there's a deep child wound. It's child mother and child father. But that has to do with just like not being quite good enough. So it's also fascinating if you pull up his Mars chart. First of all, in his Mars chart, the sun, I believe, is like right on the ascendant. So that's kind of perfect, right? He comes out swinging. But also, he's got, I can't remember what planet is, dang it. Another planet, but it's at 27 degrees. This is Saturn, I think, yeah. Oh, yeah. Which is in conjunct the United States moon, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's like him needing to become president to prove to his dad that he is worthy. It's almost even the part of him that needed to be better than his dad. What can I do that my dad hasn't already tried and already done? I need to step out from underneath my father's shadow in real estate. So the entertainment thing was part of that. The presidency definitely is part of that. So it's him trying to heal his child wound. So I'm going to look more. I'm really curious about what happens to him up till this next election. Like if he ends up running even. Not saying that he's not going to. I haven't even fully looked. There's several more charts we need to look at. But I've been saying for a long time that he may, depending on how he's feeling about his success and, where he's at in his process, he might just decide, okay, I'm going to go back to my life that I can control. And that's, we'll see. Okay, I'm going to stop here because it's getting dark. I'm like a vampire now. Thanks for watching. And hopefully this is helpful. With your chart, your birth chart, go through and look at all of the planets. So start with the sun, because that's going to give you the first little bit of information. Look at the house placement, look at aspects, and then drill down deeper. Look at the ruler. Look at house placement. It's a story. Tell the story. The sun is, remember, the sun has to do with, as a verb, it's I am. It's the child, right? It's identity. So this is the moon's I am. Okay? And then just go through all the other planets and personify them and just add another layer. Okay, take care. I'm going to go turn some lights on. Bye.